Welcome to the Victory Win Show. I'm Victory Win. This is my first podcast, and I'm a novice at this, so this will be fun. But my idea of my show came from someone I was working with in my last position as a program coordinator in affordable housing. And they had been doing podcasts before and said that it would be really great. They thought I would be really great doing a podcast because I have so much information that I provide people. So much, in fact, that I don't even always remember that I have the information. That comes from a lot of life experience and living in the same place for so many years. I'm a lifelong Oregonian, and I lived in Portland, Oregon for most of my life, but I've been in the Pacific Northwest, period. So I have made it to where I have information for resources and things, not just in my own city and state, but as well as Washington and even some California resources, and then over into like Idaho and other parts. So to talk a little bit about me and how I started getting experience was I worked for a collection agency that was owned by my dad. And in the collection agency business, part of your job is to do what's called skip tracing. And so skip tracing is when you're trying to find someone that doesn't really want to be found or that doesn't know that they don't want to be found. And in doing that, I learned a lot about places, other cities, and other resources and things that were there pretty much accidentally. So, plus my dad's philosophy was always know your world. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. So I really work hard to know my world, not just my city and state, but the whole world. I haven't had a chance to travel much worldwide, but I have had the opportunity to travel across our country and see different places and different cities and things. So I do have a college degree from Portland State University in social science and lots of years of experience. As I said, I went to middle school, high school, and then college later in life, much later in life here in Portland. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of background. I have two children. They're grown, a boy and a girl. And then I have, or male and female, I should say, although my daughter identifies more as fluid, so I should be fair with that. And then I have two grandchildren, and they are 13 and 11, almost 12. So I love being a grandparent. I think it's really awesome, and I'm sure that I will talk about my grandchildren a lot because I have them. My daughter's a single mom, so I support her in every way I can. And even before she was that, I did support them. But I think I can believe that it takes a village to raise children, and I love being part of my grandchildren's lives. I love go to their school and hang out with them and just, take them places and do things at home with them. I think being a grandparent is awesome. It's the best. I always say if I could have just done that, it would have been fun. So, so I've worked in nonprofits now for over 15 years here in Portland. And the first nonprofit I worked at was an agency that provides education to parents that are mandated to have that education, typically by a probation parole officer. The qualification of being in this program was that they had to have criminal justice involvement. And that could be of any kind at any level. So it wasn't, just people who were felons or things like that. But I interned there while I was going to Mount Hood Community College, which is where my Associates of Applied Science degree comes in. And I'm very proud of that degree because that program is very exclusive. And I was out of school for a long time. And so when I decided to go back to school and I was looking at what I wanted to do, because I've just always been a helper and I wanted to help people, but I never really knew what that looked like. So in going back to that, I went to through that program, and It's a degree in, mental health and human services. Yeah. And my emphasis was on addiction as well. So, but that degree really enabled me with the internship to have an opportunity to go right into working, which I became a coach and taught parenting classes to these folks that were mandated there. And through this position, I was able to be exposed, or sadly, to CPS, Child Protective Services, and family court, and things like that. I was used to dealing with parole and probation, so that wasn't that new for me, but being able to advocate for parents, especially parents of color, who there's disproportionately their children are taken away disproportionately. Oregon had a reputation at that time for taking children from people of color faster than non-people of color and keeping them away from their parents longer. So I am a person who, anytime there's an injustice or the system, as we call it, I am going to push back as hard as I possibly can, even sometimes to the point of being asked by a judge to either stop or be held in contempt. So I like to use my voice and do use my voice to help other people who don't have the opportunity, don't have the experience, and just are feeling like they don't have any hope. So that's something that I did when I first started out of college. I worked there for about 5 years doing, as I said, facilitating parenting classes and healthy relationships classes and anger management, things that people are typically mandated by a judge or their probation parole officer to do. And I loved it. I loved being able to do that. I loved facilitating the classes. I think at the end of it, I had calculated how many classes I taught and parents I'd graduated, and it was some number like 350 or something like that. So I was very proud of that, and just getting to see them reunited with their kids, or at least having more parenting time, felt like there was, I was making a difference. And that's sometimes hard to feel when you're working in nonprofits and doing direct service work, as people who do that kind of work now know, which I'd like to invite people to comment on this, good or bad. I understand that's easy to pick people apart on things like this, and I feel like sometimes in our society, not sometimes, pretty often, we tend to do that. I'm not, really sure why, but it is something that happens, so I'm prepared for that. But feedback is good. I enjoy feedback. And so, and especially because this is new and I don't know what I'm doing, and I just am starting this thing. So feel free to email me with any questions or comments at victorywinproductions@gmail.com. So it's VICTORYWINN productions@gmail.com. And I look forward to that. So my other work experience, I guess, to just kind of establish myself here, I worked after I left the center, which was where I was at with the parenting classes and whatnot. I went to work for a domestic violence organization, and interestingly, it was international. So I was working at, my job was to man the crisis line and then to bring Americans back to the U.S. when they called and wanted to come back from whatever country they were in, because they were experiencing domestic violence or had been sexually assaulted, and so the focus was to get them home. And I always say, man, I wish I would have paid more attention in geography, because sometimes when they would tell me where they were, I would have absolutely no idea what or where that was. And the first thing you have to do is find our closest embassy to where they are. And so that's also can be problematic. Thank goodness for being able to research things on Google and other ways. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the work that we did. But that job was very emotional, a lot of emotional labor and vicarious trauma. If you don't know what vicarious trauma is, It's when you're experiencing your own trauma based on what you're hearing from someone else or seeing something happen to someone else, and it becomes a traumatic for you. And for me, that was something that occurred more than once, but a few times very intensely. There were 2 fatalities that happened. One of them, I had to help the stepmom of the victim go retrieve her stepdaughter's remains and bring them back. And that was the most vicarious trauma that I experienced there. And that was when I decided it was time for me to do something else after about 2.5 years of working at the crisis line. It was impacting my life tremendously. I was having trouble sleeping, I was trouble eating. So again, with those people, if you're listening and you're a helper or you do that for a living, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's very difficult to not get involved with these kinds of cases, and absolutely with my personality and tendency to help, wanting to do everything I can to help, and you take on a lot when you do that. So even if you're not in the profession of helping, if you're just a person who's a good neighbor, a good friend, and you have a lot of empathy and nurturing characteristics, you'll know exactly what I mean by all that. Yeah, so then I left there and went to work for a large organization that has the majority of the shelters, homeless shelters here in Portland area. And I went to work as a veterans case manager. So I got to use VA money to help homeless veterans, which Oregon, a few months ago, I haven't looked it up recently, but it was last year, had the highest number of homeless veterans in the country per capita. That is not a number that we should be proud of ever. And so when I was working, my job was to house homeless vets and then let them go through a program that the VA offers that they help pay rent up to 9 months. And then the veteran has to pay the rent on their own, but it gives them an opportunity to get on their feet and, be able to stay housed. So I did that for a while, and I was very good at it. Not very good at the paperwork, because paperwork to me is just nothing but bureaucracy, especially when you have the same form that says exactly the same thing like 3 times. Right now in our country, this whole thing of getting rid of waste and all of that stuff, it's not people, at least in my experience with the VA. Yes, they were probably top heavy like most government agencies are. But it's not the top people that end up going. It's, of course, the people who really matter and do the hardest work that they cut. So when all this stuff is happening currently, I am especially watching the veterans programs and the Veterans Hospital, because I can say from my own experience, just working to help veterans, the bureaucracy and the things that you get told and the hurdles you have to go over after these folks have served the country, given parts of their brains and bodies as a sacrifice for our freedoms, they're literally just treated like they don't matter. And I witnessed that. I experienced that with people that I was trying to help through no faults of their own, other than their wounds from being soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, Coast Guard, whatever branch they served in. When they were in active duty, which most of the ones I had were Vietnam veterans, and then the conflict we had in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, and young people that are never going to be the same, old people that have not ever been the same since their service. And we need to acknowledge them and thank them for their service, certainly, but the most important thing is to help them get back and be part of society and be able to deal with their wounds, whether they're physical or especially emotional, the emotional trauma that we take so long to talk about. So that's what I did, and I'm also very proud of that. I housed a lot of them, and they stayed in housing for the most part. I didn't have a lot of recidivism, which is definitely a goal. And then after I left there, I went to work for affordable housing, which is where I just was, and my position was cut. just in February. So I've had this idea for my own business for about 8 years, but it didn't include this. So I'm doing some other things, trying to get that going. And I'm hoping it will go, because I'd really like to be able to have the business and not go to work for someone else if I can this time. So some topics that I was kind of thinking about for the podcast as I go forward are basically like, giving resources, a resource every time I have a podcast, which my goal is to try to get one per week, usually on Wednesdays, and releasing it on Wednesdays, and having a resource or 2 resources. I'd like to have some input on that, but a resource locally here, and then also a resource that's national. And then just having some topics I thought about. I have recently become responsible for my mother, who's in her early 80s and has Alzheimer's, has dementia. And the things that I had to go through when I first went and got her from Eastern Washington and brought her back to Portland were just unbelievable. She had nothing. She was left at a hospital by her then husband and his son with nothing. Not even a pair of underwear. And the hospital, they told them she didn't have any family to contact, even though I have 2 younger brothers, and we've always been in Portland and definitely been in the same place. But the point is that when I had to try to get her Medicare stuff and her Social Security stuff and even just access to her bank, even though I was appointed by them and a judge signed off that I was a power of attorney, none of those places recognized my power of attorney. None of them. So she had to give permission, which I argued with, like, she has dementia. Her cognition is such that she can't take care of herself. And yet you want her to give you permission to talk to me. All right, let's do that. All right, here, Mom, tell this person that I can talk to them. And then she would, and they would do it. And I thought, this is so ridiculous, especially for like a person like me who has had to have such strict confidentiality in so many of my positions. And just to have them be like, yeah, okay, now you can talk to me. That just was just so ridiculous. That, yeah, you won't recognize this signed power of attorney that she signed when she was cognitive, and a judge's order that it's filed in the state of Washington with a judge, because the attorney did it. You won't recognize that, but you let her say that you can talk to me. Anyway, I'll try not to get off on tangents during the show, but it's hard for me not to, because this stuff is so frustrating and just makes no sense whatsoever. So again, going back to what this current administration is doing when they're talking about fraud and saving money and all this kind of stuff, these kinds of things are a way to save money without so many people losing their jobs. It's, the bureaucracy with the paperwork and the duplicate forms and this not accepting a legal document as proof that you are somebody's representative is a waste of time. It's a waste of time and money for everyone. So those are things that, again, a lot of times in my experience with bureaucracy, they don't ask the people anything. The people who do the jobs, the people who've experienced what I experienced with Medicare and with Social Security, and the DMV actually was the easiest to go get her license. They didn't push back at all. I just got her birth certificate and she signed it, but they said I could. That was the easiest one, to be fair. But just trying to get all of the things set up, it was hours and hours of my time, hours and hours. So I can devote a whole show to that, and I will, just talking about resources and what I did to try to circumvent the system and be able to get that done for her. And then where I went from there when I had to find her care. I had to find a place because I could not care for her 24/7 as I was working, and neither could my brothers. We all 3 are still working. And so and I just don't have the space at my home to have her with me. comfortably. And so I just, needed to be able to place her somewhere where she could be taken care of. And then, some other topics that I thought about were having some of my colleagues and friends who work in nonprofits come and do this with me and just talk about the program that they have and that they are part of and what that looks like and how long it's been around. And then similar programs for other people in other areas. I'm fortunate to have my daughter that works for a group that they are in more than one state. They're in a lot of states and providing care for addiction in opiates. And so I would definitely invite her to come and talk about the program that she has. It's a telehealth program. And then, take questions and stuff about that. Some things I wanted to also talk about today, I think, are just the things, this self-care, that word is so overused. I don't like it at all. So I try to think of other ways of talking about it. But I think just making sure that you're having fun, especially when you're, have any job. Well, every job that I've ever had has its own level of stress and takes a toll on us. We basically live in a country where if you're not, part of the 1% or even, lower than that, and you have the ability to retire at a young enough age, or, you have that ability, because now we live longer, so it takes longer to make sure you have enough money to stay, housed and keep your housing and all of those things, which, I have, again, had experience with people. The fastest growing number of homeless people is the demographic of people over 68. So that's really sad that, they really, when they retired, they didn't have enough people in their 80s. They just didn't have the plan, to be here necessarily into their 80s. And if they could stay in their own home that long, eventually the property taxes drove them out. So that's a big part of the homeless population, at least that we have here in the Portland area. But I wanted to talk about some ways that I decompress and that I get to, take care of myself. And the first thing that I have to say is music. Music is something that I've always had a big part. It's always been a big part of my life. My family was very musical. I love to sing, even though, whether I'm good at it or not doesn't really matter. I love doing it. I love to sing, and I love all kinds of music. So one of the things I want to do for the show is to just have a song of the day. And when I was thinking about this, how a song of the day came about, I was actually talking to my grandchildren. And oh my gosh, how kids are so tech savvy and just, do all the things on YouTube and everything. And the older one said, well, you should just have a song of the day, Grandma. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I should. I should have a song of the day. That's a great idea. So I'm going to keep getting input from my grandchildren, my daughter, my son, and my partner, and the people that I love and love me about this show. And also I'd like to have input from, as I said, y'all. My email, again, is victorywinproductions@gmail.com. But for my first podcast, I wanted to have the song of the day be Victory, because that's my name. And it is by Trampled by Turtles. And I like the Trampled by Turtles. I listen to them. As I said, I have a very eclectic taste in music. I'll probably have some rap as the song of the day. I'll probably have a little bit of country. I'll definitely have hip hop and blues and jazz and pop music. I really run the gamut. Heavy metal, I have some, but as I say to my grandson all the time, I can't deal with the screaming. I'm not a fan of the screaming. The music sometimes on the songs that he'll play for me that have the screaming, I like the music. If they would cut out the screaming, I would just love it more, because I do love the music. I definitely love to hear the music, and it relaxes me and it gets me into just a different place, a very different place in my life. I can listen to music and completely just change my mood and my disposition. And I have so many songs that when they come up, I have all these memories around the song, and I hope you do too. You know, I hope that there's something, if it's not music, I hope that there's something that we have in our communities and as with each other that we can hold on to, and that, you know, when we're in having these difficult times, regardless of whether it's with family or work or community or the world or government, whatever it is, to just be able to say, hey, that reminds me when I was at this place with these great people and we were doing this or doing that, or I was with my family, or and we did this, or this was when I, you know, was in this relationship and we did this, or hey, I broke up. This was a breakup song. There's just so many things that music does. It's always the background of our lives. And if, like I said, if it's not music for you, what is it? You know, what is it? Was it just the place? You know, if you're in the same place, or oh, when I was up on top of Mount Tabor, this happened, or you know, that does it for me as well. But mainly for me, it's really about the music. So my song of the day today is Victory by Trampled by Turtles. And that's going to be my first show. I'm going to end it with a song, and I hope y'all enjoy listening. I have 2 or 3 more shows coming right away that I will post. And again, victorywinproductions@gmail.com. I'd love to hear some feedback. I know that this is probably, you know, not your usual podcast. I know it's not. I'm not polished, and I don't really want to be. I really want to just be me. But please send me some comments. Also, if you have ideas for shows, if you have particular resources that you might need, that you're looking for, I can start making a list. And during the show, I can talk about 1 or 2 of them or refer them. And if I know about them, talk about what I know and how they are and what they help with. And we'll go from there. So thank you all very much. Again, this is the Victory Win Show. I'm Victory Win. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Was lonely, it ain't a sin to want something better than the shape you're in. The rain came at the break of day. Your light in the window, babe, said come on in. It's a broken heart, babe, I know the sound. down from a moment